In today's episode of Joe Knows Retirement, we're talking about the 5 pillars of pension planning, the 5 things you must have in place as you enter in retirement or if you are in retirement. And so my name is Joe Schmitz. I'm the CEO and founder of Peak Retirement Planning. And this is what we specialize in. We specialize in the 5 pillars, the one-stop shop where we have the CPA in-house. We help clients facilitate their estate planning documents. We have the Medicare specialists to help make sure they find the right supplemental plans or Medicare Advantage plans when that time comes. We try to do everything all in one place. We tell our clients all the time, we do everything except cut their grass. And with winter approaching here soon, we probably will not be shoveling their driveways as well. So they have to figure out that side. But anything else, we always tell them, call us at anytime. We'll always get back to you in 24 hours. So the purpose of this video is really 2 things. One, if you're DIYing your retirement, it's to make sure you have a checklist of items to know in each of the 5 pillars for what we feel is most important to have in place as you enter in retirement or again in retirement. And if you have a team already, or maybe you're looking to work with a team, then this should give you a really good understanding of the type of planning we do, or to make sure you're vetting your current advisor, or to give you an idea of what type of firms to look for that does this true comprehensive planning. There's a lot of firms out there, not all of them do comprehensive planning. A lot of firms will charge a full 1% fee, but only do investment management. So hopefully this is a great guide for you here. This is something that we walk through with all of our clients when we onboard with them. There's other hundreds of things that we do as well, but these are the things to kind of make it more summarized to help you understand. So that's what we've got in today's video of Joe Knows Retirement.
Joe knows taxes.
Joe knows the market.
Joe knows Social Security.
Joe knows income planning.
Joe knows pickleball? No.
This is Joe Knows Retirement.
So let's start with the first pillar and the most important pillar in my mind, and that is because most of our clients are in the 2% club. These are people with pensions, high income in retirement, and also with $1 million or more saved. That's less than 2% of the population when you add in the statistics based on those 2 people, right? Only 20% of people have a pension, less than 10% of people have $1 million or more. So when you have a high net worth, when you have a high income in retirement, typically you're not going to be in a lower tax bracket at that point, which is what you've probably been told all your life, which is probably the biggest myth for people in your situation. Now, for half of the Americans out there, that is absolutely true. Most people will not even pay any taxes at that point. But for you, this is going to be different. This is likely going to be the biggest expense in your retirement, and it's the one that we want to plan for the most. And also, you have to understand all the decisions that we make on the other 4 pillars will all play off of the tax planning pillar. So you're going to be able to see that as I break this down in the video here today. But one of the most important parts of this tax plan is making sure that we have the use of tax software, reports, and calculators. We see a lot of people who try to DIY this on their own that are almost just guessing, or they're not really sure, or they've built their own calculators that may not be necessarily accurate. So we always recommend people, hey, when you're doing something this in-depth, we really encourage you to work with a team. If you want to DIY it, that's fine. Just, maybe understand that you may miss a few things, or you may not know what you don't know is typically what we see. And so that's something that's going to really allow you to be really realistic with what you can do with your situation. When we build tax plans for our clients, we're spending 10 plus hours when we do just this pillar, just to find all the gaps, to find all the opportunities, to make sure we're running all the numbers, not only now, but also down the road, right? What is this going to look like when we have to take requirement distributions in the future? What's this going to look like when we reach age 63 for Medicare premiums? What about when we start taking Social Security? What's the tax impact? And so there's a lot of things to factor in here, and you have to be aware of capital gains, Social Security taxation. We have to worry about the Medicare premiums I mentioned, and we have to worry about how it all plays together. And then our whole goal here is how do we pay the lowest lifetime tax bill? And so we've got a lot of calculators that help show that to make sure our clients are making the most efficient and optimizing those decisions as time goes. The next checklist item on tax planning is Roth conversions. Now, this is not a strategy that everyone should do, but for those in the 2% club, this is something that can make a lot of sense. And the reason why, again, is high income, high net worth all the way through retirement. this is going to get pretty nasty for most people that we see when it comes to their future tax burden if they don't do anything, especially knowing that most of the people we work with have all of their money in tax deferred vehicles. And so when they go and take money out from those, they're going to have to pay taxes when that time comes. And so something they could consider is earlier on in the retirement. Right now, we've got the one big beautiful bill. We've got a great opportunity with the tax rates extended to be lower to really do some Roth conversions and some heavy lifting on this at really good rates. And so we help our clients decide if they should do a Roth conversion or not, and also how much should they look to convert, not only this year, but also putting together an actual Roth conversion plan for them to see what's going to be most efficient and save them the most money in taxes, as we mentioned earlier. The next planning item when it comes to tax planning is RMD planning. Now, required minimum distributions for most people will be either age 73 or 75 when they're forced to take money out of those tax deferred investments. And this is something that a lot of our clients are very concerned about. When they have $1 million or more saved in that tax deferred, that's going to be a big tax bill that they're required to take out. If you just have $1 million and you're 60 years old, by the time you're 75, that could be up to $2 million or more, and your RMD at that point is about 4%. So you maybe have to withdraw $80,000 plus all of the pension and Social Security that you have at that point. You're going to be in a really high tax bracket. You're going to potentially force some other issues with Medicare premiums and things like that as well. And so we look to find ways to help our clients reduce that RMD, but we don't typically wait until they are 73 or 75 to do that. We need to start planning now and implementing strategies now so that we can get ahead of it. The next item when it comes to tax planning is charitable planning. This is a lot of fun for us. This is something that is very true to our values. One of the credentials I have is called the Certified Kingdom Advisor. And what that all is about is how do we be the best stewards of our wealth. And so it's a credential that Christian financial planning can hold if they go through the requirements to do so. And one of the big things, part of that credential, is charitable planning and how do we help people be more generous with their money. And so looking at a lot of strategies like donor advised funds or qualified charitable distributions or other ways to really give efficiently and also incorporate that into our plan can lead to a lot of money in tax savings over time. And then the next item in the tax planning is tax prep. Now, if you're working with a CPA who is not at the same office as your financial planner, I really think that's a missed opportunity. I really think that having those two professionals work together can not only make your life easier, but also ensure that you're getting things done the right way. And so that's something to really consider, that how are you having everything play together, right? You may be doing tax planning from January to December, right? Getting ahead of it, being proactive. And then from January to April, that's when tax prep happens. That's when you're reactive. That's when you're taking all the documents and everything you did here and making sure it's filed it correctly. And so a lot of times with the client we work with, if we're implementing more advanced strategies for them from a taxation standpoint, it's really valuable to have our hands on that when it comes time to send that off to the IRS. And so a lot of clients love that service that we offer there. And we'd always encourage, and I don't want to make this all about us here today. If you're working with a team, I would highly encourage that's part of it. Or if you are looking, for a new team, or maybe you're DIY and looking for someone to work with, I would highly recommend that point to be really valuable for you as you plan moving forward. The second pillar of the 5 pillars of pension planning is when it comes to investment planning. Now, when you have a pension, your investments can be looked at in 2 different ways. In one way, you could say, hey, my pension is already considered protection. Many people say you need a 60% stock portfolio with a 40% bond portfolio, and that's what every retiree should do. You may hear that. That's a cookie cutter way of doing it. It's a good guide, but maybe not necessarily always the case. But those with pensions could say, hey, that my 40% protection, which is considered the bond portion, I've got my guaranteed income stream coming in from my pension. So if you're telling someone a 60-40 without a pension, if I can take out my pension, then, I don't probably need a 60-40. Maybe I can do 80-20. And that is absolutely true. You could take on more risk if you want to, if you have a pension. Now, the question is do you want to take on more risk, right? More risk means typically more reward. So that could be an advantage of doing so. But you really have to question, what do you want to see done with your life savings? Now, I'm also going to play the opposite side of that to say that if you have a pension, $1 million plus saved, you probably also have the opportunity to take on less risk if you really want to. And the big reason is because you don't have to get double-digit returns anymore. You can live with a satisfied 3 to 5% return, keep up with inflation, and you could be good to go moving forward, and you could still have everything protected. So those are some considerations to think about. Now, for most of our clients, they want to balance, and they want to think about how much income am I going to need up front versus later, which we'll talk about in the next pillar, which is going to play a part of how we look to protect and how you can see all these pillars playing together. When it comes to income planning, you're not only looking at the investments, but also the tax efficient withdrawals that we'll talk about next. And so when it comes to your investments, you got to understand your risk tolerance, you got to understand your income needs and any big expenses that you're going to have coming up here, but also legacy goals. There's a lot that plays into this decision. So you don't ever want to follow a cookie cutter approach in this scenario. Make sure you have a custom investment plan that's built for your needs. The second item we look at on the investment planning side is to make sure you're eliminating unnecessary fees. So what do I mean by that? Well, you've probably been with an advisor before, maybe you've been DIY investing and you understand how this works, but a lot of people will push mutual funds as an example. Now, there's nothing necessarily wrong with mutual funds. Some have done really well, but most mutual funds do not outperform the market. And so based on that, you could be paying an excessive fee for really no value. And also, if you're paying an advisor a management fee, that could be an additional fee on top of that, which a lot of people may not like to consider, to do that. And so for most of our clients, we really try to avoid mutual funds in most cases. Now, if they have a legacy holding of a mutual fund, which maybe has a large gain and we don't want a taxable event, then of course we'll make sure we hold that for them and look at ways to, divert that over time and look at, ways to reset that or sell off losses and do some tax loss harvesting on that and some other strategies to really be efficient. We may turn off their DRIPs, which is a dividend reinvestment for their dividends and making sure we don't pile on and instead use that to go somewhere else to diversify a little bit more, sell off losses somewhere else to offset the gains so we can diversify out of that single stock. So again, all part of the tax plan and investment plan for that. Not something on the list here necessarily, but just something to really be aware of for this investment planning and where things can get more advanced. And so with us, we typically look at using individual stocks and ETFs or index funds, lower cost into options, and then we're going to look to actively manage it ourselves is what we do for most of our clients to really just making sure we're following market trends. We're using data to make decisions. We're not just setting and letting it go and just hoping for the best. We're also not looking to day trade or time the market, but we want to make sure that we can use professional investment management to our favor. And Vanguard even does a study when it comes to this investment planning pillar that if you just work with a professional investment manager, and that's the next point here is professional investment management, is you can typically do 1% to 3% better than DIYing it. And I'm a true believer in that. And that's also could be an argument that if you're paying 1% to an advisor, that it could still be worthwhile, even if they're only doing investment management. Now, I would probably agree with that at the end of the day, but don't you want to get the full value for what you're paying for? And we have so many people that come to us and say, wait, you're charging the same or less than our current advisor, but you're doing 4 more pillars than what our advisor is doing. And the answer is yes. And the answer is because we want people to get what they deserve with their retirement savings. So hopefully you are seeking that or already have that. And for this professional investment management, we talked about this, following market trends, being tax efficient, keeping behavioral finance. A lot of times people want to get really emotional when they make financial decisions. And so with our clients, we're really using the data, as I mentioned earlier. We're looking and seeing if we're going to invest in Amazon, we're not going to make an emotional decision based on what we see on the news. We're actually going to look at Amazon's financials. What's the balance sheet shows, what's the profit margins, the P ratio, all the items that really matter for us to see. Is this something we want to buy or sell? So we would never throw darts when it comes to investment management. And a lot of times we see DIY investors where they may not be doing much of an understanding of which sector should I be invested in? Should I have some international exposure? What should I do for protection options? Am I maximizing the rates on my protection options to make sure I'm getting the best and shopping around to find what's best? And especially as those changes, rates go up and down, it takes a lot of proactive planning there to make sure you're maximizing that. So I'm a full believer working with a professional investment management team will add a lot of value to your plan. The third pillar is income planning. Now, we talked about this in the second pillar, but generating income from your investments is extremely, extremely important. A lot of clients want to enjoy their money from their investments. Now, so for this though, a lot of our clients may not need income. They may have the pension, they may have Social Security, they may never need to touch that. And that's where we're going to get into something in estate planning called purpose planning to start thinking ahead of what we could do for it. But a lot of times we may want to encourage them, now's the time to spend. Even though most of our clients are the Midwestern millionaire, they're the best savers and the worst spenders, are hardworking, frugal, but now could be a time to enjoy it because you can't take it with you. There's no U-Haul behind the hearse. So we help clients have those intentional conversations around how much can you spend now and what does this look like for you moving forward. And the next item on income planning is, how do we do Social Security planning? Should we take it at 62? Should we take it at 70? There's a ton of considerations to think about. There's 2,700 plus rules when it comes to Social Security. And so we help our clients decide, based on their situation, what makes the most sense. And we're going to factor in not only health is a big one, right? If you're not going to expect to live as long, 62 may make sense, but we're going to look at the tax planning considerations. Maybe it does make sense to wait till 70. So we can do some more tax planning now, or maybe look to do some more Roth conversions now when we don't have that added income from Social Security. So those are all things that you're going to want to look into, but definitely making the optimal Social Security decision is very important to your plan, but also understanding how it plays a part in the other pillars is so important. Understanding the survivor aspect of it, of your spouse would get the higher of two Social Securities, that could depend on when you take that, is all things you need to make sure you consider. The other part of income planning is pension planning. Now, pension planning plays a part of all 5 pillars. That's obviously what we specialize in here, but I want to make a couple key points here to understand for those that are near retirement or going to be retiring. And that's your pension options that you have is what we're referring to here of, do you take a survivorship option? Do you take 100% survivor and have to pay the hefty cost that you're going to have to pay every single month for the rest of your life for the benefit of your spouse to have something continually? Could make sense. But what if you look to do some other strategies with that? Maybe you looked at life insurance, or maybe you're already self-insured and your spouse is already good to go if you pass away. So why get $5 million of term insurance if you only need 1 million, right? If someone told you that, you probably wouldn't go and overinsure and overpay is the consideration. Now, we always want to make sure the spouse is good to go in that scenario, but those are some things to think about. Now, the other thing with pension planning to understand what your options are, do you want to take the lump sum, partial lump sum, if those are available to you? And so we have calculators that help us show all of the pension option planning, help us decide if what do we want to do with the survivor planning. We run all the numbers so clients don't have to guess if they're making the right decision. But also on the lump sum versus partial lump sum, we have to make sure if we take that we could do better on our own than what that pension could provide to us moving forward. Or maybe they just want to make sure that money's there as a legacy for their family if they pass away. So really understanding all of those options. But again, those are irreversible decisions on those options. And so it's really key, regardless if you already made up your mind, make sure you run your numbers so you don't miss anything and don't miss out on thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars, which is potentially the cost over time if that wrong decision is made. Now, we already covered the next item with tax efficient withdrawal strategy, but this is something a lot of our clients are concerned about. Again, do they take out of their tax deferred, their tax free, or their taxable investments when they're in retirement? When do they take Social Security? That's going to play a part of it too. Also, their pension, how does that play a part of the tax efficient income planning as well? So we always tell clients, hey, when it comes time to get that money out of your investments, that's something we're going to look at for you to see which investment should we take out from, right? Because if an investment's down, we may not want to take out from that. We may want that to grow over time. And maybe we take from one that's at a high and take our chips off the table. So that's one part of the income planning conversation. But the second part is, what's the tax impact, right? What if we take out from our tax deferred investment, now it forces us into a Social Security tax torpedo, and now up to 85% of our Social Security is now taxable? Or what if we now cross over a Medicare tier, which if you're $1 over, you could pay more in Medicare premiums and you get the same coverage. And so those are things that we really want to have our eye on as we're getting strategic in how we're taking out money in retirement. That's something we see a lot of people get wrong because they don't have the software and calculators to be able to show where those are, where those cliffs are, where those things that exist are that we need to be worried about. Now, the fourth pillar of the 5 pillars of pension planning is healthcare planning. And this could be, as some consider one of the bigger expenses in retirement as well. I first think taxes are, and then healthcare is probably a close second. I know Fidelity does studies on this that you can look at hundreds of thousands of dollars in cost for Medicare and also other health insurance costs and other health costs in retirement, not including long-term care. And so if you are a married couple, that could really add up over time. And so something we help our clients with is just understanding what Medicare planning options do you have. So when our clients reach that age of 65, we want to make sure we can help them find the right plan. So that may be either a supplemental plan or an advantage plan. The key though is you got to be educated. And there's a lot of insurance agents out there that will tell you one's better than the other and that you got to do this versus that. Now, we really want to start with what's the client situation to decide what's going to be best there. And so we help them through those conversations. They don't have to go to an outsider to do so. But we also help in the planning for Medicare premiums that I've already talked about throughout this video. So starting at age 63, you could actually pay more for your Medicare at 65 based on your income. So if you had a really high income year at 63, you could now pay double, triple more for Medicare when you reach 65. And so we really do a lot of planning around that to keep Medicare costs as low as we can over the lifetime of our clients' lives. And then the next item here is long-term care planning strategies. Now, a lot of people, when they think about long-term care, they think about insurance. And now we're not the biggest believers of long-term care insurance right now for most of our clients. We just feel like it may be overpriced, but plus our clients can self-insure knowing they have pensions and $1 million or more saved. So this isn't something that we necessarily just want to forget about though, because long-term care is a very high need. So over 70% of people age 65 or older are going to need long-term care of some sorts. And it's very, very expensive. And it can be up to $100,000 or more if you specifically need a nursing home. And so for a lot of our clients, we're planning on, if we're going to need to take that large of an expense out of our investments, how are we going to structure our investments to make sure that's protected and available for them so they're not going to face any risks if that were to be needed. So those are all really key considerations to think about there. And there's some other ways to plan for long-term care depending on the needs, but it's really important just to dive in and see where your situation is first. And the other item with healthcare planning is planning for out-of-pocket expenses. So we kind of already touched on this with long-term care, but what about the other items that could pop up just randomly, right? You need a surgery or something happens that's not going to be covered fully by your insurance. That's what we need that money available for always, to be able to do what we need when we need it in retirement. And the other part of healthcare planning is planning for early retirement. And so there's a lot to do with planning for an early retirement. We can look at income planning, tax planning while our income's low. We may need some extra money from income if we don't have Social Security yet, as an example. But the biggest consideration, I'll say, is health insurance of what do we do before 65, before we're eligible for Medicare. So a lot of our clients, we help them find the right supplemental plans to ensure they have everything they need as they enter in that stage. And so that can be very valuable for them to make sure they're not overpaying and shopping out their plans every single year, especially with Affordable Care Act making some changes here due to the One Big Beautiful Bill. And so there's a lot of proactive planning that's needed at this point moving forward. Now, the fifth and final pillar is estate planning. And this is probably one of the most important ones to make sure you're stewarding your wealth well, but also providing for your loved ones. So many times we get people that come to us. One of the biggest reasons people work with us is to ensure that their spouse is good to go if they pass away, and also want someone there to provide for them. So the first item when it comes to estate planning is the documents that you'll need. Now, some people wonder, do I need a trust? Do I not need a trust? Well, that's going to depend on your state. That's going to depend on the rules of your states. And it's also going to depend on your situation. So you really want to make sure you're working with a team to help you understand what that looks like and to see the pros and cons of that option for you. But there's also all these other items that you're going to want to get and put in place, like a power of attorney or a will, or the things that are going to make sure that if something happens to you, everything is in place. So that's something with our clients. We help facilitate that process. We don't want our clients to ever go without having those documents in place or not sure what they do. And a lot of clients really like that aspect of knowing that we're there to guide them for those items. And then the next item of estate planning is survivor planning. So this is to ensure that the spouse is good to go from a financial standpoint when one of the spouses passes. Now, I'll say the more important part of this probably is the emotional side. We get a lot of people that come work with us because they're worried that if their spouse passes away, they want to make sure they have a team to serve the other spouse is ultimately the idea. And so many times we have DIYers who are just, that's a big concern for them because one is more engaged than the other spouse. And so that's an area we try to step in and provide that support. And, on that as well, there's a lot of planning for what's called the widow's penalty. You could pay nearly double the amount of tax if you go from married filing jointly to single. And so that's something we start to really get ahead of. And again, proactive planning to make sure that when that spouse is in that situation, they're not going to be forced in having to pay higher taxes on higher income if we can find ways now that will lower their income in the future. And then the next point is reducing taxes to beneficiaries. So a lot of our clients have goals of leaving money behind to their loved ones. And that's something where we can really add a lot of value from a planning standpoint, but also something we do with a lot of our clients is we work with their children to make sure it's very family oriented. Now, my mom works here. We've got a lot of other family members and friends who work here as well. And because of that, we like to extend that experience to our clients as well. And so we always encourage our clients, hey, we'd love to help your kids. We'd love to make sure they're set up. And not only to make sure they have a plan now, but also, hey, if they're going to pass the wealth to their children, What are they going to do with it? Most inheritances are spent right away. This is a great opportunity to that when that happens, okay, now we have a plan already in place and we know what we're going to look to do with this wealth at this point. So the person receiving it doesn't have to say, I don't know what to do. We already have that organized and in place, and now they can make sure it's going to even pass on to the next generation or be used wisely for the rest of their retirement as well. And we actually had a guy come to us one time and he said, Joe, we're leaving our advisor of 10 plus years. We want to make sure that we work with a team that does everything all in one place. They don't have that one-stop shop. They're not bringing up the ideas that you're bringing up. And the second reason is I want an advisor team that's going to be there not only for my retirement, but for my wife's retirement and for my children's retirement. And I told him, I said, we'll probably be here for your grandkids' retirement too, knowing that our team is much younger than most advisor teams out there. And that's something we take a lot of pride in. And a lot of people really value that. Just knowing we are in the cutting edge, knowing we are, innovative, knowing that we're going to be here to serve potentially 3, 4, 5 generations as time goes on. My mentor is in the industry for 40 years and she served 4 generations. And I always tell her all the time, I said, I'm going to serve 5 generations. And you can actually watch a video of us getting interviewed together, which a lot of people have really enjoyed. So that's a key point of the estate planning section here. And then the last point is purpose planning. What are we going to do with all this wealth at this point? As I mentioned, you can't take it with you. You either fly first class or your kids fly first class is something that we hear people say all the time. It's going to depend on your goals and your vision for your wealth. And so we always tell people there's only 3 things you can do with your money. You can spend it, you can give it to charities or organizations, or you could gift it to your loved ones. And you can either decide to do that now, or you could look to give or gift your money when you pass, because it's just going to go to whoever the beneficiaries are on your accounts at that time. And so really encouraging clients that, hey, you have financial freedom at this point. You can do what you want, when you want, with who you want, and you can't get the time back. And so we really try to hold our clients accountable. We have a lot of conversations around this. We tell them, we want to see you go do those trips. We want to see the pictures. We want to see the enjoyment, the fulfillment. You've worked so hard for 30 to 40 plus years. Make sure you're getting the value of it at this point, but also stewarding it well for the loved ones that you have and the organizations close to your heart. And that's what makes our jobs a lot of fun. So those are the 5 pillars of pension planning that we talk about often. And if you're watching to this point and you like the type of planning we do, and maybe you've been wanting to reach out to us to explore working with us, feel free to schedule a time on our website or in the description below, or we'll pop up a link here to schedule that time, and we'll have a 15-minute call to see if we could be a good fit. And we're not currently taking on everyone that reaches out, just to be overly transparent there, but if you fill out that questionnaire and we feel like it can be a great fit, then this could be a great opportunity for us to serve those who probably watching this content, following the crowd we serve, those in the 2% club, those who are Midwestern millionaires, as we talk about all the time. Even if you're not from the Midwest, we have clients all across the country, as we always talk about. And so if that's you, we'd love to explore further. And we have frequently asked questions on our website as well for you to check out to make sure that this is something that you're looking for as well. So with that all being said, that's all I've got in today's episode of Joe Knows Retirement and the 5 pillars of pension planning.